questions as we go along, and we'll try our best to answer them. This is what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about dry seeds, wet seeds, seed storage, pollination. We'll also talk about who we are as FoodLink and what we do. But before we do that, we want to know who's in the room. And we're going to ask you to do a small activity, just so as we are talking and you're learning and writing notes down, your wood has time to dry. So let's go ahead and start with introductions, and then we'll give you the instructions for the things that are right in front of you. How does that sound? All right. We'll start with Jazz. If you could introduce yourself, your name, where you're coming from, and what you hope to learn today.
My name is Jazz. I live in Porterville, and I have a home garden that Brenda and Jenna helped me set up, and I've done some seed saving, but I've had a lot of plants cross-pollinate and end up with weird stuff. So I'm kind of interested in learning how to do a better job, so I end up with seeds that are what I expect them to be. At least somewhere.
Mi nombre es Genoveva Arroyo, vivo aquí en Lucy.
My name is Genoveva and I live here in Lindsay. I'm a little nervous. I'm not sure what to say.
Gracias, Genoveva.
Hello, I'm Christian Andrade. I'm just here to learn.
Thanks, Christian, for being here.
Oh, I'm Yannicka Franco. I'm with the Chumney Tribe, and we are just here to learn about seed saving. We have a small farm where we mostly grow in raised beds, but we're gonna start installing our hoop houses pretty soon. So we're looking at expectants. And then Robert went to, I don't know, but he's one of our workers.
All right, thank you, everybody. Oh, yeah, Reina.
Good afternoon, Reina Rodriguez. I'll be helping with language access today, just to make sure that everyone can participate. We do have a Spanish participant in the room, so if we could just make space, or be diligent about making sure that we're asking if there are any questions. That way we could all participate. But thank you for having us here. I'm already learning.
Thank you, Reina. All right. Jenna, do you want to start with the instructions? Or
Sure. So, in preparing for the workshop, we realized that wood glue takes about 30 minutes to dry. So, we're going to do things a little bit out of order, and we did prepare a little bit already, just so that we didn't have to wait a whole hour for things to dry. So, you see this is a set that'll make one screen. You can undo it. And what we're gonna do is put them together like there's a certain way. Okay, like this. So notice how they're all overlapping. It's like when you fold a box, right? And you have to tuck the corners in so they're all one on top of the other. So it's like you might have to flip it over, but no, you might have to flip it around. They'll all fit eventually. And then okay, and then we're gonna glue. And then we're going to use the wood glue, and we're going to put yeah, we're gonna put it on the little joint, the two joints that we need to secure.
Tengo que hacer las dos.
No,
I'm just worried that I don't want to get
I think it's fine. They need to do both, right? Sí, vamos a hacer las dos. Any questions so far? Vamos a hacer por 30 minutos y vamos a hacer los dos.
Okay, so wait, before you do the damage, we're gonna do it. But, so this is gonna need to be a square, so right now it's recommended something. That'll work. And then, so just glue here, here, and we'll do the same on here.
Once you're done, if you want to pass the glue this way, so she can.
Toda mi fundida.
Y después de que se seque, entonces vamos a dejar que se queden quietas por 30 minutos.
Done with mine, I think.
Y esto va a ayudar a ir acomodándonos. Oops.
Yeah. We're all cut. And we'll talk about what classes it's really easy.
Yeah, the long ones will fit in there. But we're just gonna let them dry for half an hour.
Okay.
And then you can, and then we can just nail them together.
And it's okay if the wood, what is it?
El resistor cae sobre el papel.
That's why we put the paper down. So you're
Por
good.
eso pusimos el papel, así es que no hay problema.
When we put these together, we use something square. So like just like a cereal box or just a tissue box, any sort of box usually has a right angle. Oh, sorry. And we just made sure we glued it when it was around this so that it was square. So that when we put them together now, it forms an actual square and doesn't end up sort of like that and wonky.
And you don't need this. You don't need any fancy equipment. You don't need anything expensive. You could use a cereal box. You could use a tissue box. Anything with a right
book?
angle. A book.
Just be careful about glue.
Yeah.
Oh, you might have to flip that one over, Robert.
All right. So I think we're all set. And I know you're curious, but don't touch it. Don't check it. And by the time that we're going to be working with them and you start building this, it'll be dry and it'll be really easy to build. All right, we're going to keep going. So while we wait, we wanted to talk about who we are. So we are FoodLink, which is a food bank. So the food bank distributes food every single day to different areas in Tulare County, different cities and unincorporated communities. And then as a part of FoodLink, we are called Deep Roots, and we support people in growing food inside, outside, and in the community or in community. And we wanted to talk about our mission. And our mission is food sovereignty. And food sovereignty means being a part of every step of the food on your plate. And our program is working to build connections in neighborhoods to make food sovereignty a reality here in Tulare County.
Can everybody hear okay?
Oh,
A little bit louder.
A little louder?
Okay.
The fans are pretty loud.
Oh, snap, okay. Jen, do you want to go over?
So we offer, as the Deep Roots program, we offer a number of supports. We have our home gardens, like Jazz is a part of. We have are working on building our neighborhood food guilds, which is getting different home gardens and people in certain neighborhoods together to support each other, and so they can lean on each other a little bit more, and just building relationships. Demonstration gardens, we have one in the back of FoodLink. It's about a half acre, and just trying out different ways of growing. We practice organic growing and permaculture principles, which is just following the ways of the land and the plants and following their lead, really. And then we have a lending library that we have recently really started up, and we have all sorts of different tools in our library that home gardens and community participants can check out and use for a week at a time, and then they return it, and so that everybody has access to tools.
And something cool is that these we have different sizes. So for different seeds that you're saving, you can check one of these out. Let's say you're saving something that's really small, and you're like, I really need that screen. So we're excited to add this seed saving screens to our lending library. And thank you for being a part of that. And this is who we prioritize. We prioritize the communities with the most need in Tulare County. This includes families or individuals in unincorporated communities, low-income families or individuals, undocumented and mixed status families, farm workers and agricultural workers, working in empaques, like packing factories, any part of the industrial food system as it exists right now, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, disabled, and LGBTQIA communities. So we have offerings for everybody that are free, like workshops and seeds, and this is who we prioritize for the programs that we said that we talked about that we offer. All right, so today our purpose is to advance food sovereignty, which we learned about is just being a part of every step of the food on our plate, from seed to whatever we're cooking, through sharing materials, resources, and knowledge about seed saving and building hand winnowing screens together. That's what these are called, so that no one has to buy seeds again, probably.
We hope. So hopefully you'll learn, you'll go away from here knowing how to have, like Jazz was saying, cross-pollination not happen as much if it doesn't need to happen. How to isolate certain plants so that you have the same varieties next year when you do save the seeds. You'll be ready to start saving your own seeds at home. You'll have at least one screen and know where to find more screens. And you'll connect with somebody new that you didn't know before coming here.
And why save seeds? Why does that matter? Why is that important? And we wanted to talk about 4 different things that we think are important. Ancestral connection to region, foods, or tradition. It's so important the ways in which we are connected to our ancestral lineage. And making sure that we're honoring that ancestral lineage, and that can look like growing foods that you ate growing up. That can look like growing foods with you're going to be an ancestor, right? So growing food with young people or youth in your family, or any traditions that you have or have been carried in your family. Seed sovereignty, and this is important because multiple generations of seeds from the same area acclimate, and they'll do well in similar climates. And it's important to know where they come from and know how they grow. So seed sovereignty is really, really important. And that's connected to the multiple crises that we're living in. We know that the real crisis is capitalism. And at the same time, we have the climate crisis caused by capitalism and our ongoing pandemics worsened by capitalism. So the climate crisis is making it hotter, our fire seasons are longer, there's been flooding, and we know it's going to continue to it was really cold this winter and really wet this winter. We know that the summer is probably going to be very, very hot. So how is the food that we grow acclimating to that? And that's why saving the seeds from the vegetables that we grow, the flowers that we grow, the fruits that we grow, they'll keep acclimating to that, and we'll be able to share them with people that live in similar climates. So we know that New York City is getting hotter. We know that all over, because of these crises, conditions are worsening, and there are ways that we can support in the livelihood of our communities here, but also not regionally, but also across borders. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is a crumbling food system infrastructure from seeds. So there's only a small number of large seed companies that control what they sell, and they value profit over people. So they're going to sell hybrids that produce more. They're going to try and make money, right? And these practices are exploitative and extractive. They're the practices of toxic industrial agriculture, again, that places profits over people. So from seed to now the floodings, there's so many people out of work across the food system. And we see that and we feel it in our communities. And pretty sure we're gonna be feeling that in the receipts for for when we go buy groceries. We know that 2 bags is already $100, and it's probably gonna get worse, which is why it's important that we're growing our own food, we're sharing that food, we're sharing the seeds, and whatever we know, we're sharing it with our neighbors, because we protect each other. All right, I'll pass it to Jenna.
So there are a few different ways of saving seeds, and it depends on the type of seed, how you're gonna have to save it. So the first way is dry. I gave some examples. Can anybody think of more examples? We've got beans, peas, lettuces, spinach, anything that when it flowers and then the little pod forms, it's dry, right? It's like you can just take it off and put it in your bag, and you don't have to worry about it getting all over anything else. Do we have any other dry seeds? I know I put a lot on there. Some examples.
Has anybody saved any of these seeds?
I've got some mustards and arugula and pak choi that I've saved.
Ooh.
And those are basically all brassicas, which are
Sunflowers are pretty dry. Although we did learn that you still have to dry sunflowers out a little bit because they'll get moldy if you don't. We learned that one the hard way.
And after they get moldy, they're no good. So if you save seeds and they get moldy, throw them out. We suggest to use mason jars with a napkin, and you put the seeds in there, and then you turn that upside down so the napkin can absorb the moisture. And then use not the top, but the thing that screws on until you know the seeds are dry. That's just for storage.
Does sunlight have anything to do with it? Or like if you give them like enough warm or hot space?
You want to generally store seeds in like a cool, dark place for sure. But when you're drying them out, it's okay to leave them on your counter just like out. If there's, say, something like sunflower, something that, or like a pepper, that it's not super wet, but it's also not all the way dry when you're saving pepper seeds, right? So just to leave them on a piece of like wax paper or foil, something that they're not gonna really get stuck to, like paper a lot of times they'll get stuck to, and paper towels and cloth towels. I find myself having to like peel them off. So when you're drying out already relatively dry seeds, you can just leave them out for like a week or so, and that won't affect too much of their germination, but darker and cooler is best.
And that's a perfect segue to wet seeds.
Wet seeds are a little different. We're not going to do this today, but we do want to talk about it. And you should have a handout in here about a lot of different things. So this handout has wet and dry on it. And it'll show you different methods of saving them, and a lot of other things like isolation distance, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it'll help when you're saving them, and it gives instructions for each type of seed, like what should it look like when you're harvesting it to save the seed. This one says beans harvest pods when they have turned leathery and begun to turn brown. So you want to like think about, because some seeds need to mature a little bit longer while they're still on the flower, and then you can take them off, versus others you can just save them right then, like peppers. And it also has instructions for wet seed savings as well. But we have one specifically about tomatoes, which have this gel sac around them that makes it hard for them to germinate. And germinate just means like when they're in the ground, like sprouting, right? And so you have to like soak them in water for a certain amount of time. It's just a couple of days, like 2 to 3 days, until they form this little layer of like, this is when mold is good, I guess. Like this like sort of moldy, like sort of layer on top of what you're soaking them in, on the top of the water. And then the seeds that have fallen to the bottom, those are the good ones. The seeds that are floating and in that layer of goop on the top, you want to strain that out. You want to take that part off and then just like rinse the rest of the seeds that are on the bottom, run them underwater a few times, and then you lay them out on like a wax paper or a piece of foil to dry. That's just to get that gel sac off of the tomatoes. And other plants do have it. Sometimes squash will come out with too much of a gel sac. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you can just lay them out to dry. You'll have to just sort of feel for that slipperiness of them. Another thing about some seeds is, like I was saying about dry seeds, it's true of wet seeds too. When you when you're saving squash seeds, you want to squash and cucumber, you want to let them mature, the whole fruit mature on the vine until it's like way riper than you would eat it. There's a picture of these eggplants. Like this is the eggplant, right, that you would eat, the purple one. And this is the one that you would save seeds from. And for the cucumbers too, it has an example, like the teeny one would be good for pickling. The medium one would be great in a salad. And the big one, the red one, like this is all the same cucumber, just longer time on the vine. And the red one all the way to my side is that one would be like the seeds inside would be mature for seed saving, but you don't necessarily want to eat that one. Any other wet seeds that anybody can think of? Or have you saved any wet seeds before? Yeah, they're a little more complicated and intimidating because they're goopy. But, yeah.
Any questions? And you have a handout in front of you. It has a lot of really good information. They're in English and Spanish, and we have more. So if you want to take some more home for friends or neighbors, please feel free to do so.
Then we have pollination, and this goes along with isolation. So this handout has some different ways of going about pollinating and making sure your flowers and fruits are pollinating the way you want them to, so that you'll get the same variety, or maybe you want to make a new breed of something, get a different variety next year. But generally, we just let things open pollinate. And when you're letting them open pollination, just means we're not doing anything physical to protect the flowers from any other insect or wind blowing them and blowing some pollen onto a different plant. And that's generally how we do it, but you do run the risk of having some cross-pollination that way, even when you don't want it. We had one home garden said they got a spicy bell pepper because they planted their hot peppers really close to their bell peppers, and so they mixed and had babies, and now they got seeds and they started them, and they had a spicy bell pepper, which I thought was fun. And maybe that's delicious, I don't know. But if you don't want a spicy bell pepper, then for pepper seeds and tomato seeds, you can, because they're self-pollinating, right? I don't want to be saying something wrong. Yeah, peppers and tomatoes and eggplants. Peppers, tomatoes, and eggplants specifically. I'm sure there are others, but they are self-pollinating. So you can actually, once you have the bud happening, you can put it in a little baggie, like that one up here, blossom bags, that allows light to come through, but is very close-knit mesh, so that, and like air can go through, but the bugs can't get in to do the pollinating work. They'll pollinate themselves. They have both female and male parts, so that they'll just do it in the one blossom. And that'll allow you to, and so before it opens, you want to bag it, or else it could be, once it's already open, it's open for business. But so folks do that same thing with like corn, but corn actually you need to hand pollinate it if you're going to bag it. So once it's been pollinated, you can put the bag on top of it for corn. But for peppers, eggplants, and tomatoes, you can just do the little bag. Or you could do the whole plant. They sell, like, on Amazon, you can find like painters bags. What are they called? Paint bags that or liners, and then you can put the liner over the entire plant, and that'll just keep it isolated to itself and cinch it around the bottom. The other option for isolation is like tenting off a whole area, and a lot of the time some folks will just release like a set of bugs like if you come across some pollinators that you can catch, they'll like release it into that little tented area and then let them out later. But I think that the easiest way to do that is just let the wind do the work when you have the sort of like the tent around the whole group, and so that you're not necessarily risking the pollen going onto other plants. Also, distance is an option, right? So if you plant them far enough away from other varieties, the likelihood of them cross-pollinating is way lower, but it's also not guaranteed. Or like maybe a bee has something on its feet, from way far away. It's very possible. But this this handout gives the distances that are ideal and the number of plants that you're gonna need for each type of plant to ensure that you have enough plants in bloom for pollination to actually happen. With tomatoes, like I said, like you only need one, right? Because it's gonna self-pollinate, but with some you need a lot more to make sure you're having enough seed. And there's also some other options like hand pollination. So for like squash, when sometimes squash just like aren't pollinating, or the bees aren't here. Where are the bees? I don't know where they are, but they're not at my garden. So sometimes I'll go out and I'll take, you can tell the difference between a male and a female squash or like cucumber flower, and you'll take the male one off. You can actually just pick the male flower, peel the leaves away, and then have it touch. Just bring it around to the female flowers that are on the vine still and have them touch all of the little female flowers, so you can pollinate your own that way as well. You can also grow like other flowers to sort of distract. So if you don't want to do a lot of work of like isolating, but you kind of want your plants to be a little bit further away, you can grow lots of like border flowers to distract the bees sometimes and the other pollinators, and that can help, but it might not do the trick of isolating exactly. I think, yeah. Any questions about that? I know it's a lot, and you have a whole handout on it, but I'm more than welcome to try to answer questions.
And important if you're trying to revitalize a certain type of vegetable or seed, if you're trying to save it or bring it back, or let's say there are no bees around, and even if they are, there was an article about bees that got into a cherry factory, like those fake cherries, that cherry they put on top of ice cream, the maraschino cherries. And they got into that as a food supply because it was sweet. But then they went around like the flowers, and then the honey they produced smelled bad. It was rotten, and the bees started to die. We have a lot of factories here, and I know it seems really far-fetched, and like what are the ways in which we are responding to our local context, preparing like ourselves even initially with this knowledge, but now you know what words to look up on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. If you want to try this, or if you look up videos on YouTube or whatever, now you know what they're talking about, and now you know what to look up for this, which is really, really important in the larger context of things. So.
The paint strainer bags that I was talking about, they're called 5-gallon paint strainer bags. So it's like when you're filtering your paint through to make it soft.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so now to the good stuff. So in front of you, you have a blue handout. The front, it's both in English and Spanish. If I could ask y'all to grab it. So these are the screens we're going to be building today. They're small, that's what's drawing in front of you. They're pretty small, they're comfortable to hold, they're not too heavy. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. It's right in front of you. The first thing to, like the basic, is find 8 pieces of the same length. You could do it with 4, but then you'll see as we build it, this wire is just gonna be right here on the edges overlapping. You could do duct tape, you could do cloth, duct tape and then cloth around it. But for protection, and because we're gonna have kids use it, we're gonna have older folks use these, we don't wanna run any risks, right? So we're covering ours up with another layer of wood. That's why we're doing 2 sets. But we wanted to mention that. So find 8 pieces of the same length. This can be scrap wood, this can be extra wood you have from another project or a home build, or a hard plastic. Make sure it's a comfortable size for you to hold, and cut it if you need to. We recommend using something with the right angle like a cereal box to make sure that each side is square. Or if you have these are called a speed square handy, if this is that right angle that we talk about, just so that even though it might not be the right size, you know that each side is square, so when you put them together, they will make a square. So that's step one, structure. So find 8 pieces of the same length of anything. The second step is finding a screen. So you're gonna assemble the 4 like you did right now, using the base wood, using wood glue and nails if you're using wood, and then you're gonna add a screen on top. You can use hardware cloth, aluminum window screen, or any wire or mesh. So you can go to any Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever store is close to you, and that cloth that goes on windows, it can go on here. That's $6. So it doesn't have to be expensive to build one of these. You can also go to Lowe's and get hardwire cloth, and you can hear it's like metal. That's a little bit more sturdier. And it looks like that. Jim's holding it up. They come in rolls. You can get the smallest roll, and then you'll just have to cut it to whatever size you're building.
Which is easier said than done.
Yeah. So we have your 4, and we're gonna put the mesh on top, and then you're gonna secure it. So after you have your base, you're gonna place the 4 remaining pieces on top, that same square, to secure the screen, so it's not poking you or cutting you or uncomfortable in any way. And we're just gonna use nails and hammers to do it. Yeah, so that's easy as 1, 2, 3 to build a screen. And now we're gonna, in our little groups, we're gonna build them together. Any questions so far? Yes, so we asked. That's the first question we asked. Any other questions? All right, so Jen and I will break out and walk around with a screen for you, and then we'll build these together. And then next to you is a bucket with seeds, seed packets, and seed labels. So everything is already there for you. So after you build this, you're gonna get a chance to actually use it if you want. So for some seeds, and you can take them home. You can be like, okay, like, you know, I'm gonna pack these up, leave them for y'all. But from building it to using it, we're gonna be here to support in small groups. Any questions?
Well, we may not have given it enough time to dry, so just be careful. And we definitely are gonna want to nail these parts together, right? So
Let's do the screens first. Have people choose them.
don't you wanna, they should secure this so that it doesn't, once they put the screen on.
Yeah, I was saying, are we nailing them like this also?
Yeah. We'll run enough time.
We have a few different sizes.
So screens. I cracked so many of these. You're gonna want to hold it as you're hammering. You're gonna have a hammer one, so just
I'm looking at your message there, going, do you have some time there?
Yes.
Because I do a lot of brassicas.
I think this would be a good size for you.
Yeah.
What kind of sizes do you want? I've got another little one. Or this is like a medium. These are like, this is a little bit bigger. This is the one that we did. I have one that's even smaller than that.
Well, I don't think I need to go smaller. I'm a little bit fast, but
So, but first let's hammer this part in that way.
I had a mount right there where I did it at.
Of course, and I do too.